Okay, continuing on with the E's. Again, I've skipped a couple here. We're going to go to empiricism. Definitely something you're probably going to have to know something about. Empiricism. So it's not the idea of empire, it's something different. If it was empire in terms of, many countries ruled under one sort of dictator, it'd be imperial, IMP. This is Empiricism. The philosophical position that all knowledge derives from experience, from the direct observation of phenomena and from introspection. It thus contrasts partially with rationalism, which identifies reason as the source of knowledge and rejects the notion of spontaneous or innate ideas. While empirical, quote, pursuits may claim that all ideas arise only from experience, others object that complex thought and shared culture cannot derive purely from personal perceptions. Thus, a softer version of empiricism states that while not all ideas are causally connected to sense perception, causally cause and effect, this happens, creates an effect, which then creates a cause, which creates an effect. That's maybe by causally. Anything we can call knowledge must be justified through the test of experience. This is the basis of the scientific method. Empiricism, as an epistemological explanation goes back to the ancient Greeks, but the term is primarily associated with the 17th and 18th century British philosophers John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume. Though their views differed on the exact nature of reality and source of ideas, the philosophies of all three start from the premise that it is only through the senses that we have access to the world, whatever its actual form. Hume's and Berkeley's version of empiricism, which holds to our perceptions of phenomena, constitute the only reality we can have knowledge of, is called phenomenalism. By contrast, Locke believed the world is composed of real things that we truly perceive. So the idea of we look at the world as things sort of happen and we kind of perceive these sort of things that aren't really maybe capital T true versus no, this stuff is real and we're perceiving it that way. So it's sort of a difference of perception. In the 19th century, a form of empiricism known as pragmatism, which stressed evaluating ideas by their practical effects, was founded by the American philosopher George Sanders Peirce and popularized by William James, who called his philosophy radical empiricism. The theories of positivism and logical positivism, also called logical empiricism by its adherents, in their emphasis on scientific method and belief in trial by experience, can also be considered forms of empiricism. And we can do that. Okay, so Enlightenment. So it's going to kind of go into a couple things here. One about sort of what it would be, but also talking about the age of enlightenment. So we're going to get, again, crossing a few subjects here. So enlightenment is the state or process of coming to the truth out of ignorance, illumination after darkness. In Eastern religions, especially Buddhism and Hinduism, enlightenment is the fulfillment of the human quest for perfect understanding. In European and American history, the Enlightenment refers to the predominantly intellectual mood of the 18th century, exemplified by confidence in the power of reason. While the two concepts share the image of light overcoming darkness, they are in many ways opposites. The Eastern tradition's enlightenment involves shedding earthly knowledge and attachments in order to achieve perfect understanding of cosmic reality, whereas the Enlightenment was focused on rational thought and human progress. This sort of, by shedding knowledge and attachments, they don't necessarily mean that you absolutely literally forget everything and that you are completely you could watch a dog being killed in the street and just be completely unattached for it. And that's not what they mean by it. What they mean by it is that one of the things for it is that as thoughts come and go, you're not applying you're not really applying to them any sort of other meaning than that was a thought. So the idea is if you're sitting there and clearly and calmly just watching like a river, and there's a stick and a leaf, goes by, a duck, something like that, those would be your thoughts. You don't even necessarily have to think of, this is the thought of my dinner, this is the thought of my thing. You don't actually have to sit there and look at the river and go leaf, stick, duck, or anything like that. But now what happens if you try and, oh, that is the greatest stick I've ever seen in my life, and you jump into the river and splash about, you're causing a lot of sort of mental and emotional chaos then. And then when you get it, if you don't get it, then you're like, God damn it, I put in all that work and I didn't get it. Or if you do get it, be like, well, it's just a stick after all. And then you get into like a spiral, of whether or not you really wanted it, whether you need it, whether it was worth getting it, whether it got away, anything. So you see how those thoughts kind of spiral. It's relieving yourself of that, splitting out of that. So attachment doesn't just mean just like, oh, I don't care about people and I don't care about this, that, and the other thing. It's that you're not applying almost like judgment to your thoughts, and then not only your thoughts but also situations that happen, because you will still need to commit to action in some way. You still need to eat, sleep, drink water, go to the bathroom, unless you're going to be a hardcore ascetic and sit in the mountain and weave your own loincloth and grow the beans that you'll eat forever and that's it. You're still going to need to be sort of involved with certain things, even if you're in a temple or ashram or something like that. But how do you do that without locking on to sort of pre-programmed, conditioned, possibly harmful ideas? So enlightenment translates the Sanskrit word bodhi, denoting awakening, wisdom, and awareness. Bodhi is the root of Buddha, an enlightened one. The Buddhist concept of enlightenment derives from the Buddhist's 7-week meditation seating under the Bo tree, during which he attained progressive levels of awareness, arriving finally at perfect enlightenment, or Buddhahood. Enlightenment is seeing the world and the self as they really are, free of the veils of illusion. It is the precondition and passageway to nirvana. Also Sufism. So enlightenment, seeing the world and stuff as they really are, and free of the veils of illusion. The biggest sort of illusion being separation. The idea that you and I and the tree outside my house and my pug and my cat and the people down the street and the people over in India and down in South Africa and South America and the trees there and the water and the world or any of this other stuff, the fact that there's a separation of this is a sort of ultimate illusion. And you're kind of freeing yourself of that. The new current of thought in the period known as the Age of Enlightenment or Age of Reason challenged many of the assumptions that had prevailed throughout the Middle Ages. It was characterized by cosmopolitanism, secularism, so cityhood, sort of more out of rural, more sort of city and sort of, higher sort of stuff about in the city. Secularism being sort of rule of law and government and everything, not exactly religion. Distrust of traditional authority, respect of human dignity, and the conviction that reason would illuminate mankind and lead to the perpetual social, political, and scientific progress. Respect for human dignity, so long as you were certain types of people, for the most part at the time. Although the term enlightenment, got a German word, Aufklärung, don't know German, Aufklärung, was first used in this context in Germany, where Immanuel Kant proposed the motto "Dare to Know." The movement had its impetus in England and Scotland in the work of David Hume and Adam Smith, and its greatest flowering in France. There it was closely associated with the philosophes, the foremost of whom was Voltaire. Again, I do recommend Candide. The philosophers were the most part not philosophers as such, but popularizers of the 17th century doctrines that inspired them, so 1600s, particularly the rationalism of Descartes and Spinoza, and the empiricism of Bacon and Locke, as well as Locke's theory of natural rights. Much of the philosophers' agenda consisted of the repudiation of the dogmatism and authoritarianism of the Roman Catholic Church. Many of them contributed to the Encyclopedia, 1751 to 1772, a monumental work edited by Denis Diderot. It looks like Denis Diderot, but it's Denis Diderot, which was intended to be a compendium of all human knowledge, particularly the new knowledge promoted by the philosophers. Enlightenment thought was tremendously influential in colonial and post-revolutionary America as envoys to Paris. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin befriended many of the philosophers. Back in the day, not too far either, the internet didn't exist. Or if it did, it was some sort of weird little military thing for a few decades, and you couldn't look up things on Google, and Wikipedia was nothing. To look things up on a massive scale, you needed an encyclopedia, at least probably 26-volume series of books, sort of like a super dictionary with words and people and concepts and countries and maps and pictures and all this other stuff that you had to actually look through, like a book. Those were the days. So, a couple more here. Yeah, we can get through a couple of these here. Some of these, a couple of these are really tie into some of the other words, and then they all do kind of tie into a certain extent. So, entropy. Entropy, a measure of the disorder in a system. The idea that natural processes tend to move from relative order toward disorder. The term was coined from the Greek for transformation by the German physicist Rudolf Julius Emanuel Clausius in 1850 in his articulation of the second law of thermodynamics, which states in part that, quote, the entropy of the universe tends to a maximum, end quote. The principle of entropy holds that the disorder in a closed system never decreases, and that as the entropy of a system increases, there is less energy available for work. In a steam engine, for example, the steam produced by hot water meeting cold air is converted into mechanical energy to drive a piston. However, the water and the air in the steam chamber gradually approach the same temperature. The system becomes progressively less ordered, and its entropy increases. Entropy is also defined in terms of complexity, the number of ways the parts of a system can be arranged. The greater the number of possible arrangements, the greater the entropy. Some information theorists take issue with this definition, arguing that the growing complexity of information distribution and consumption leads to greater social and technological organization, not less. In the mid-19th century, the German physicist Hermann von Helmholtz and others predicted that the universe, considered a closed system, will eventually run down, ultimately reaching maximum entropy and suffering a heat death when all temperature differences have disappeared. That notion, however, has been called into question by quantum theory, which suggests the possibility of multiple universes in which the same physical laws may not apply. So Epicureanism. Epicureanism. And so entropy, so you know, to Entropy. Epicureanism is a school of thought established by the Greek philosopher Epicurus. The Academy Epicurus founded in Athens in 360 BCE, called the Garden, after the walled enclosure that housed it was open not only to free men, but to women and slaves as well. Although our word Epicurean suggests a cultured hedonism, sort of a heeding mostly to the sort of like pleasures and senses sort of thing. The Epicurean endorsement of pleasure seeking did not at all imply the uninhibited satisfaction of desires. So yes, we're endorsing sort of pleasure seeking, but not to the point where you go buck wild all the time. The philosophy of the early Epicureans was thoroughly materialist. It was divided into three parts: a theory of knowledge that emphasized direct experience, a physical system based on atomism, so again, breaking things into the smaller parts, and an ethics incorporating both systems grounded in physical sensation and the natural course of atomic movement. From the idea that our bodies are composed of atoms, Epicurus drew the conclusion that our sensations are due to the perturbation of these particles, and that he extracted from this the idea that one's goal should be to achieve a pleasant combination of these feelings. Good vibes. This did not mean, however, that we should above all else seek pleasure and avoid pain. The Epicureans identified the ideal human condition as ataraxia, or serenity of body and soul, and advocated temperance and other traditional virtues as the best way to secure a pleasant life. Epicureanism was introduced into the Roman world in the 1st century BCE, above all by Lucretius, whose philosophical poem on the nature of things embraced Epicurean atomism and esteemed mental tranquility and devotion to truth as the greatest pleasures of life. In this period, however, the hedonistic distortion of Epicurean philosophy that was later associated with Roman decadence also arose, holding that since the preferred natural states are characterized by pleasure, all pleasurable states must be the proper ones.